One of the most enjoyable things in life is to go out with like-minded people to do something all of you love in a beautiful setting with wonderful weather. Hi, I'm Arati. This weekend, I and two of my friends went out to Northumberland to sketch. The trip was planned by lovely Mandy, who has been there many times before on holiday with her family, so she's quite familiar with the place. April of Monkey Mintaka provided the wheels and, of course, comic relief. And I was lucky enough to just be passenger princess and enjoy the ride. Today I'm going to take you through all the art supplies that I took with me and show you a few of the sketches that I did while on the trip, as well as a few little vistas of the places that we went in case you also want to travel to Northumberland. The last time I took a trip up north was to Kendal to visit April of Monkey Mintaka, and we also met up with Mandy then. And I'd reminded myself not to take quite so many art supplies and to take a smaller backpack, which, as you will see in this video, I did. I kept my kit super minimal because I knew that we would be doing a lot of walking and I didn't want a hugely heavy pack. I did add 2 little Ziploc bags to my kit in order to make sure that my ink and my gouache paint, which is now in this and I will show you in a minute, did not leak while I was traveling on the train. I took 3 sketchbooks, a little plastic bag to sit on if the ground was wet or if it was dirty, this Angu travel bag, an empty juice bottle so that I could wash my gouache brush in it in case it got a little bit clogged up, and some ink to refill my fountain pen in case I ran out, which in the event I didn't actually. Let's look at these things individually. The first thing you need when you're going outdoor sketching is some clips to make sure that your books don't flap around in the breeze or the wind. I have these clips that I am not quite sure where I got them from. They came with something, and these metal clips that I got, I think they were clothes clips or quilting clips or something that I originally got for silk painting with, and they just clip on just like that. Really easy. These ones I'm not sure where I got them, so I'm sorry I can't tell you the source. But again, very easy clips, super flexible. This is literally just a plastic bag that I got some deliveries in. It's one of those usual grey plastic bags that people send things in, and it's large enough, as you can see, it's ginormous. It's large enough for perhaps 2 people to sit on if they need to. I've literally just folded it up, rolled it, and clipped it, making it really compact to carry around. I find this way more compact than a camping foam to sit on because that does bulk up quite a bit. So this is much easier to carry around. Doesn't provide as much cushioning, but neither does the camping mat anyway. This is the Angu expandable pencil case, and it has quite a lot of stuff in it. There's a zip pocket here. There's this little pencil case thing here with a net pocket as well so that things don't really slip out. And in this larger pocket, I have quite a few things. There are a few extra clips as well, because you can never have too many clips and sometimes they get left behind. And a whole bunch of markers and brushes that I will show you in a minute. But the best part about this case is that it's expandable like a suitcase. So if you pull this zip closed, it actually becomes way more compact. So it goes down to almost half the size, like so. It still fits all of this stuff, but you can take out half of it and make it a really thin case as well. But what did I take in this kit? Let's start with the reason I took so few things, the reason I was able to take so few things, my gouache kit. This is my travel gouache palette, which I have filled with fresh gouache and left it to dry. This has a bunch of mixing colors and some convenience colors that I use really often to save me the trouble of having to mix them every single time. It's also got a bunch of palette space over here. This is just one of those empty palettes from Jackson's Art that I have then put my own little pans in. In a couple of weeks, I will be releasing my updated gouache swatches video so that you will know exactly all the gouache colors that I use and the palettes that I have. In addition, I have a bunch of water brushes. I will list all of these down in the description box for you in case you're interested in getting any of them or finding out what they are. I have a ruler. This is a triangular prismatic, I guess, ruler that I think I got from Choosing Keeping. You can clip it onto a book as well. I didn't in the end use this, but it's always a useful thing to have. I took 2 Karen markers. Again, I'll tell you the colors in a moment. 1 Molotow marker with a brush tip filled with white paint, a scissor that I got from Muji, You just slide that open and it becomes a full-fledged scissor. I'm not quite sure why I needed this, but I thought it would be useful to have. A bunch of color pencils, Luminance, Derwent, more Luminance, a Prismacolor, and a Posca. I took a bunch of Caran d'Ache Neocolor 1s. These are not water soluble and I really like them. I enjoy using them on top of things or as a resist. Here's another Molotow marker and the white Caran d'Ache Neocolor 1. I have also taken a brush, and then in this little zip pocket on the side, I had 3 more little travel brushes, which I did not end up using at all. This one expands to a larger brush. These are 2 small ones that I got in Germany and a full-size brush. Next time, I probably wouldn't take these because I didn't end up using them. I only used the water brushes. So a slight waste of space, but oh well. Then I've got a kneaded eraser and a sponge. And in here, I have a little swatch card of the colors that are in my gouache palette and a little paper just to test colors on. In the main bag here, I have my Lumos pen, the Tombow Furunosuke pen, which is a really nice brush pen. This thick pencil, mechanical pencil that I got from Choosing Keeping. One of my favorite mechanical pencils, Faber-Castell in 0.7. This is 1.2, this is 0.7. And a Blackwing pencil. This is the Blackwing Pearl. Then I have this little Tombow blending mister, and this was really handy to rehydrate my dried gouache. So as you can see, it's pretty dry except for the turquoise, which never really dries completely. And all I would do when I got to a place was mist it gently like this before I did anything else. This was the first thing that would come out. I would mist all the dry gouache and I'd set it aside. And then by the time I got everything else ready, the gouache would be nicely softened and ready to use. One final thing I took was this Tegal sharpener, which has different levels of pointiness that you can sharpen with by using this dial, which opens up the sharpening area as well. So you can get a short tip, such as this one, and you can also get a long tip, such as this one. Can you see the difference there? So number 1 will get you this, and number 5 will get you that. And there's a bunch of numbers here that will get you medium pointiness as well. So that's what I've got in this kit. The one extra thing that I did have was my new Fude pen. I usually take the Hero Fude pen with me, which is this one, which you've seen in my videos before. But I really wanted to test out this new one that I got, and it was absolutely wonderful. I took 3 sketchbooks with me. One is my regular notebook that I use as a sketchbook. The second one is this Pith Kabosu sketchbook. It's a little A6 one, and it has a lovely paper in it, so that's the sketchbook. And then the third one is the Cara Cara sketchbook, which is 200 by 140, A5-ish, but slightly smaller than that. Let's check out the colors that I took. As always, I swatch everything out in my sketchbook prior to taking it, so that I'm not confused about the palette that I'm taking, whether I need to take some more or less or whatever. So in my lovely gouache palette here, I have my little guide sheet of gouache colors. I've done them in the order in which I take them. Winsor & Newton Titanium White, Daniel Smith Cobalt Blue, Daniel Smith Hardsa Yellow Light, and Daniel Smith Quinacridone Magenta are mixing colors. I can get pretty much any color I want by mixing these 3. So just taking 1, 2, 3 white and black, I would say, although I use that very little, I can get any color I want. However, getting these colors takes quite a bit of mixing, and if I'm using the convenience colors, then I don't have to mix quite as much. It's a little bit more speedy, so that's why I have the rest of them. I could just travel with 5 pans, but I don't. All 3 of these are Daniel Smith for mixing. Then I've got Winsor & Newton Pale Rose Blush, Holbein Carmine, Winsor & Newton Linden Green, Winsor & Newton Cobalt Turquoise Light, Winsor & Newton Indigo, Daniel Smith Lamp Black, Daniel Smith Buff Titanium, which I use for mixing instead of white, Schmincke Horadam Olive Green, Winsor & Newton Sepia, and Holbein Naples Yellow. I prefer this yellow to a deeper yellow. It's just easier to mix with. So that is my entire palette, and that's what I used on this entire trip. You can see from this little mixing sheet that I do often mix things and get different colors according to what I want to use. I can use this for testing, but I can also use it as a little palette in case these 2 little spaces get filled up, which they don't often do, and I can always wipe them off, put extra paint onto one of my sheets of paper to prep the surface and go with that. So I've got all of the gouache swatched out here, and if you want to pause and zoom in, you can just see all the names written down over there. For the pencils, I took Luminance Buff Titanium, Luminance Blue Denims, Derwent Chinese ink. This one is a water-soluble one, so that's dual purpose. Prismacolor Neon Orange, Luminance Dark Sap Green 739, Luminance Carmine 575, this Carmine Lake, Luminance Indanthrone Blue 649, Luminance Sepia 407, the Posca Black, and the Lumen 719 in Dark Phthalocyanine Green. I'll come to these in a minute. And then for the Neocolor ones, remember these are ones, not twos, they are not water soluble. I took the light gray, white, carmine, light cobalt blue, Payne's gray, and salmon. You can see there are some very similar colors here, so I'm kind of repeating that same palette and making sure I have similar colors in all three mediums, in paint, in pencil, and in Neocolors. I also did take a bunch of pens and markers, like I just showed you, in blacks, so that I could add detail where I needed to. Now, the lovely Mandy did get us a present. One of the things she did was she made a portrait. Isn't it beautiful? She got the likeness so closely, and yet she made it cute as well. That's so adorable. She got us each a little watercolor block from Jackson's. Beautiful paper. And she got us Derwent Chromaflow in Foliage and Flame, a Staedtler brush pen in Teal, and a Sennelier soft pastel in Grease Vert Mousse. I hope I'm saying that correctly. It's dark green. I'll pop that out to show you. But since it's a soft pastel, I have kept it in the box because it can be quite messy. It is the only soft pastel that I own, and it is water soluble, so I can see myself using that quite often. So these were a few extra colors in that palette that I didn't expect to have, but it was really lovely to have. The one thing that I did feel the lack was a yellow pencil, but next time I will add that in to my color palette. The first piece of art we made was when we stopped in Rothbury, and this is the little piece that I made. Now, I'm not usually a landscape painter, but this is one of the things I really wanted to practice on this trip. It's something that might come in useful, and it's always lovely to practice things that you're not used to. That's kind of stepping out of your comfort zone and doing those things. I did take clips wherever I remembered of the areas that I was sketching, which I will put in throughout the rest of this video. So that was the bridge at Rothbury. And then the next time I used this sketchbook was later that day at Alnmouth, the estuary where the River Aln meets the North Sea. And I drew the boats. The tide was out, so the boats were on dry land. And I tried to use slightly non-traditional colors, but the neon of the buoys was irresistible. And that's where this Prismacolor neon pencil came in really, really handy. Later on that day, I drew from observation as well as from memory some of the people, well, dog people, the people who were walking dogs on Alnmouth Beach. It's definitely a place I want to go back to with my husband and my dog. We spent the next day at Lindisfarne Island. In fact, I should probably show you this cute little map that Mandy made for us. So on the first day we drove from Kendall's through Caulfield's Quarry to Rothbury, Alnmouth, went to the shop, checked into the holiday house, and then went out for dinner. On the Saturday, which is what I'm going to show you next, we drove to Holy Island, walked around the priory, the lighthouse, the harbour, the castle, and went to the treehouse for dinner. And then Sunday was Bamberg, Sea Houses, Croster, Dunstanburg. And the final day was Barter Books, breakfast, and back home. So that was our basic trip. This was the first sketch that I did on Holy Island. I had pre-prepped this background in advance, and then I did half the painting there with gouache paint. It was very, very cold on this day. I think it was like 5 degrees or something, and super cold and somewhat overcast as well. It wasn't particularly sunny, but it was the wind that was really getting to us. So I finished half of this, and then I came back home and sat in the garden and finished the rest of it. I'm rather pleased with this. I really like the small format, this one as well as this painting. The next one we did was from further down the path on Holy Island. I did some boats. Again, similar background, but then I've colored over it with pencils and paint, neocolors and markers. I really need more practice drawing boats. Further down the path on Holy Island, I drew this one from up here, and then I drew this one from somewhere over here, And then we came all the way around this bay to somewhere here and then sat and drew this picture. Again, I had a prepared background and I just used pen, neocolors, a little bit of marker to create this piece. I also couldn't resist drawing April and Mandy as my dog people. Again, a prepared page with just pen for these, and for these I used my Fude pen. From that same spot, I drew April drawing and a bunch of other people that I was seeing, little interesting things. I loved the backpack that this guy had. I love that this lady was wearing a really long coat and her dog kept going off at full length of the lead. I liked this lady's scarf. She was holding a book. Just general things. And this guy was standing on a rock for a little bit and I liked the pose. The following day, we went to Bamberg Castle. I had already pre-prepared these two long sections and they worked out really well because we were seated in the sand dunes. On one side was Bamberg Beach and on the other side was Bamberg Castle. If you watch the Vikings show on telly, or I think it's called Kingdom of Heaven, I haven't watched either, but April really recommended them. This castle is where that was filmed and it was absolutely glorious. The day was beautiful, it was warm in the sunshine, it was really lovely. The only thing is I didn't have enough time to finish the full artwork while we were there, so I did the base layer of paint and I had to wait for it to dry before I could do the pencil on, and we didn't have that much time to just sit on the beach, unfortunately, which I would have loved to do because there were loads of people on the beach. I would have loved to do some like observational sketches of them as well, but I came back home and I sat in the garden and I finished off the extra little bits of details with pencil and so on afterwards. After Bamberg and Bamberg Beach, we walked up into the town and had some scones. And then we sat on the grass verge and sketched some of the interesting cottages and the signposts that were in the middle of the road. I'm not a huge fan of this piece. I definitely need to practice drawing houses a bit more, but it taught me a lot and I know better for next time. If you remember from the map on this day, the next stop was a little town called Sea Houses, where we ended up having a chippy, which is usually fish and chips, but we ended up having sausages, vegetarian and vegan for me and April, and a regular one for Mandy, and it was really lovely. And there we sat and sketched some boats. I'm not a huge boat drawer, but I was quite pleased with how this turned out and some other boaty bits. Again, because I was working in gouache, I didn't have enough time to do more than I did, but I did see these interesting looking people who were yakking away in the corner, so I drew them. Didn't have time to put paint on them, but I may do so later on. I also did some observational sketches in this sketchbook on that day. This was April sketching in sea houses. I found that I'd used acrylic ink on this page, the leftover acrylic ink, so my pen didn't really go very well over it, so I stopped halfway. But here's Mandy, who was standing on my other side, and a bunch of people that I noticed coming down the road behind us, as well as these traffic cones. I was really fascinated by them and I want to draw some more of these, maybe with like dogs winding around them or weeing on them, or something funny, definitely, for sure. The next stop on our little whistle stop tour that day was to be Cruster, which had a little harbour in it that was really cute and had a view of Dunstanburgh Castle. So I had another prepared page in this sketchbook and I drew Dunstanburgh Castle. We only walked part way up and there was loads of course, sea on one side, sun on the other. It was absolutely glorious. We also did some observational sketches, well at least I did, of the ice cream van, the dog stopping. There was a lady and her child playing down in the beach section where the tide had gone out in the harbour. So that was really fun. By this time we were kind of drawn out. So we just headed home and chilled for the evening, and the next morning was our final day. So we didn't really do that much drawing. On the final day, we went to Barter Books, had a really good look around, saw some books that I will put on my wish list. I didn't actually buy them, but I did buy 2 little fiction books that are really memories of my childhood, and I would like to reread them, and perhaps my niece might like to read them one day. The next day we drove back to Kendal, where I got on the train and did a few little observational sketches on the train back to London. Again, I'd used acrylic ink here instead of gouache, so my pen didn't really work on that, so I had to stop after a while. But I did manage to do some on this page, which is mostly gouache. I feel like I might draw from these later on, or I might put them in a zine or something like that. If you would like to see a people travel zine, that would be lovely if you let me know in the comments. And then I drew a couple of Scots pines and trees that I saw out of the train window. It was really lovely coming back to London as well, seeing my husband, seeing my dog. But I feel like we had a really good trip and I learned a lot sketching out in the open, doing these observational landscape paintings in particular. I think I learned a lot from these two, as well as this one, which I don't like very much, but definitely learned a few lessons. If you'd like to see a few more travel sketches and sketchbooks, check this video out next. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!